Virgo, welcome to your March 2020 Astro Update. It's Raina here. So, in March, we're experiencing a Mercury retrograde lasting until the 9th of March, and this begins in Pisces. If you're listening in February, it's well underway, and so the month begins with the Sun in Pisces, as well as that Mercury retrograde there. And for you, Pisces is your opposite sign. So the opposite house is the seventh house of relationships. And this is kind of what's going on now. I mean, there are different possibilities how this will play out. If you're somebody who's getting divorced, this could be ironing out the details of the settlement. And, seventh house can be legal matters as well as marriage issues and just getting everything together. And because Mercury is going to go back into the sixth house on March 4th, and I tried to link that up and see how this retrograde pattern affects a person. So it's hitting first the seventh and then the sixth house, which is a house of your daily routine, the work that you do, and your health. And for instance, if there's some kind of a situation with, let's say, child custody issues, that will certainly affect your daily routine. And you may, say you get to keep the child on the weekend, and and then you have a whole new schedule. The other thing that is possible here is that something that is connected to partnership has fallen through or needs more work to iron it out. And the sixth house, it's like, I want to go into business with this person, but I don't know if, I can count on them or if we're going to get along. And so kind of like hashing things out in your mind about what exactly you should do. And on the same day that Mercury goes back into that sixth house, which, by the way, you rule the sixth house. So any planets that transit through the sixth house, that's going to be extra special for you. On the same day, on the 4th of March, Venus goes into its own sign, Taurus. And for you, this will be in the ninth house. So you're not getting, it's going to take a little bit of time for you to start getting the 10th house career transits. In the meantime, we have travel. Ninth house can be travel, higher education. So Venus in this house could mean if you've been trying to go to school and didn't have the funds that, if you applied for some kind of a student loan, maybe it's gone through, you've received it. Perhaps there was something along those lines too that had to do with even during the Mercury retrograde. I don't know if that's possible. Sometimes I think, because Mercury, I believe, is about contracts, and the seventh house can be legal matters. So I'm not sure if that's, you do have an eighth house, a couple of eighth house things. I'll talk about that in a second, because that can be like loans and things. But in any case, this can be great for having money to travel, if that's something that's really what you want to do, or for spiritual studies. On the 9th, Mercury goes direct at 28 degrees of Aquarius in the 6th house. So something is resolved. And also, remember that when Mercury transits through a house, there could be some sort of complications in that particular area. So, like with trying to apply for a job and not hearing back, and then maybe you can hear back from an employer towards the end of March or in the last half of the month, or even actually the last 2/3 of the month. And you have a full moon in your sign on the same day that Mercury goes direct. It's at 19 degrees of Virgo, and so this is the first house. if you're born in the last decanate, 10 degrees of Virgo, you're, so approximately from, I don't know, the 12th to the 22nd of September. It's going to vary year by year, but this will technically be in your 12th house, because this is a prime example of how these transits that I'm mentioning are not necessarily going to fall in the same house for everybody, depending on what their degree of sun or rising. So for you, that would be more of a kind of a, I think it would be closure of the past, and kind of like coming to terms with some of the things that you may be doing that don't create what you want in life. And this is also very psychic in the 12th house, and it can be revealing, certain patterns of self, what do they call that? It's first thing in the morning, self-sabotage. But, the interesting thing, because I was thinking, oh my gosh, it almost seems similar to have a full moon in the 12th house in the first house, because it's still an ending and still involving the self. But the 12th house is really cosmic, because it's not just like this lifetime, it could be like many lifetimes, it's your karmic past. So it's also the subconscious mind, unconscious mind, and the things that are not on the surface but coming up to the surface with the full moon there. But the reason I say kind of similar is because when you let go of those patterns, then you can let go, and that's kind of like more underneath it all. Then the first house, which is the house of the self, that's on the conscious level, the visible level that other people see, you can, if you're one of those Virgos, and most of you are going to be in that, it's going to be in your first house, that can be a time for you to shed an old skin, but something that other people may realize that you have changed in some way. So one is internal, one is more external. And when I say external, it could be the body. I mean, you could, 12th house could be addictions. And then by kind of like letting go of that, and that for those of you who have the full moon now in the first house, last month would have been your 12th house full moon, and you're ready to, see the effects physically, and also how you relate to other people. So it can be different for each person, but yeah, so you have some kind of an ending, if you will, that has to do with yourself on either an internal or more visible level. On the 16th, Mercury goes back into Pisces, that 7th house. And, one thing to say about this, also with the full moon, is that when we have a full moon, it means that the sun is opposing it at the same degree. So for those who have this in the first house, it means that you're really kind of realizing your needs. Virgos tend to be very mindful of other people's needs. But something may come about where you realize that you have needs that are not being met, perhaps, and that has to be resolved if you've had some kind of relationship issue. And when Mercury goes back into Pisces, you may have thought this out quite a bit and are able to communicate it. On the 19th, we have the astrological new year, sun going into Aries. This is in your 8th house. So this is perfect because the 8th house is the house of transformation. So definitely be mindful of this period where it's different times of the year may be seen as new beginnings, and this is certainly one of them. And what do you want to what kind of things do you want to transform in your life in the upcoming year? Saturn goes into Aquarius on the 21st. A couple days after that shift of the sun into Aries. And I have a full-length video on this. So just on Saturn in Aquarius and how it affects Virgo sun and Virgo rising. So check out my playlist if you haven't, listened to that already. This is in the house that you rule, the 6th house. So this is like right up your alley. I think that you're going to love Saturn in this house because you already love to be disciplined. And a Virgo person feels like discipline equals productivity, and that's kind of like your, main goal. And therefore you have to, you may have something that happens that forces you to be even more organized. Saturn can sometimes indicate extra duties, so perhaps that affects your ability to, maybe have free time. Like maybe you're going to be working your butt off in the next few years for whatever reason. So you have to really get your schedule on point so that you can get in other things that you need to accomplish. So that is, the Saturn into the 6th house is going to be brief, because what's going to happen for the rest of this year with Saturn is that in May, Saturn turns retrograde at only 1 degree of Aquarius, and then in early July, goes back into Capricorn. So that will go back into your 5th house. And then it goes direct in September, and by December, it goes back into Aquarius. So it's not going to be until 2021 that we're going to see this consistency of Saturn in your 1st house. Well, we could say the end of December, I guess. So on the 24th, we have a new moon at 4 degrees of Aries in your 8th house. So developments with perhaps obtaining loans, or maybe the ability to do so. Also, this is the area of transformation. Some of you, who knows, maybe this is something that is going to be a theme for you that you want to go into some kind of study of occult matters, the mysteries of the universe. And I'm thinking for those Virgos, I'm trying to think of, this is something that happens every year, that there's a new moon in Aries, so it's not like special. It's interesting because Chiron is also, maybe that's what I was thinking and didn't even think of it consciously. Chiron is the wounded healer, the asteroid that, in our natal chart shows us where we are wounded. But in the transing chart, this can be the area of healing. We can be a healer, and it's transing through Aries for the next, how many years? Is it 7? I'm thinking it's something like that. And it's going to be in your 8th house for, I'll just say, several years, And so there might be something that some of you are interested in this particular area. I would say also, I was talking about addictions, and come to think of it, with Saturn in the 6th house and Chiron in the 8th, I could see some Virgo people really enjoying the idea of perhaps becoming a, could I say like a nutritionist or something like that. Mercury rules your sign and the 6th house and can deal with diet, but with that 8th house, I could see like some kind of a purification, using diet to transform people's lives. Who knows? Maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but that's something that came to mind. And then on the 30th, we have Mars going into Aquarius, into the 6th house. So now we're starting to see, we have Saturn there, we have Mars, and both of these planets mean business. And so perhaps even for you, Virgo, that you are engaging in some kind of rejuvenation of your health, and you're incorporating movement into it as well. Saturn in that 6th house will give you discipline to be able to accomplish your goals. That's for sure. Also, the 6th house, because of, could be the workplace. And like I was saying, I mean, Mercury went back into that house earlier in the month, and when it was retrograding. So there might have been some misunderstandings at work. Actually, it's interesting that Mars goes into the 6th house on the 30th, because this is when Mercury is coming out of its shadow. So, I'm curious why, Mars is so feisty. Mars can create feistiness in the workplace, maybe conflict. Perhaps you haven't been direct in your workplace, and there might be coworkers that have been giving you crap, and you're done. You're over it. And you're going to be more assertive because you don't want any more issues. But this can also be like working overtime, okay? Like you just have a lot of activity in the workplace. So it all depends on the individual. So I hope that you enjoyed this, Virgo. If you would like a personal reading, do transit readings and natal chart interpretations, please check the link below. Have a great month. Take care. Bye.